Hi, this is Linda Robert, your solution lady and your coach, with another tip. You know, sometimes we have people in our lives that are what we might consider toxic, or that we don't get along with, or that simply rub us the wrong way, or we rub them the wrong way, and we end up in conflict all the time. I remember growing up, and this is going to sound terrible, but it's true. I remember growing up and not wanting to be around my mother. As a teenager, I would dislike her. I wouldn't want to be near her. And it was the same thing when I reached my early 20s and 30s. Except a few years ago, my mother developed dementia. And because I was the eldest daughter, I felt a sense of responsibility also. I also lived in the same city as her. So I decided to take her in. I took her in for about several years until it was more difficult to take care of her, and difficult on me and not safe for her. So I made a decision to have her placed in a nursing home. So my mother, for the longest time, was a person that I simply couldn't stand. And I think some of you will know what I'm talking about. Except as I'm walking here today, I'm thinking of my mother, and I'm thinking of all the good things that I got from being in relationship with her. Now, sometimes that's not easy to do, because we have the frame of mind, we have the negative thinking that everything that I have is as a result of my mother. Well, that's true. Everything that I have is partly as a result of having my mother in my life. I'll give you some specific examples. My mother had a drinking problem. That's why she ended up with having a dementia. Well, for a little while, I saw myself being like my mother. I remember seeing myself drink alone and absolutely thinking I'm doing exactly what my mother is doing, and I hated that thought that I would end up like my mother. I made a lot of changes. I stopped drinking at that point. I also stopped using substances that I was using at that time. And so, if it hadn't been for the experience that I had with my mother, I would not be living a healthy lifestyle now. So, you know, although at the time in my teens or 20s or 30s, I couldn't stand being around her, and I was almost embarrassed to be with her. The lessons that I learned from that, from being around my mother, were precious. You know, at the end, when she passed away, I was there with her. I had coordinated everything. I had made sure that my family was there, my kids, her ex-husband, my father was there. So my mother was surrounded by members of the family that cared for her and that loved her, including myself. And I was right there next to her when she took her last breath. And that's the only person that I could say that I've been witness to the last breath. And I have to tell you that it was, how can I say this? On the one hand, it was scary because I remember she was on a ventilating system, and I was afraid to make the decision to remove that because I thought it would kill her. But at the end of the day, she was ready to move on. So on the one hand, it was like really mixed emotions, and then when she did pass, I knew at that time that I did everything that I could to love her to the best way that I knew how, and to bring her a sense of life that I knew that she needed to deserve. So it was like mixed emotions at one point. But without her spirit being in my life, I would not have learned what I learned to be a mature, responsible woman. So I challenge you to think about some of the people that you have in your life now, or that you've had in your life before. Maybe they've passed on. And when you really think about this, what lessons are you learning from them? You know, if you had to shed a light on that particular person and look at her or him from a different perspective altogether, what is it that you've learned from them? One of the things that I encourage you to do is journaling. Because you'll think, okay, I can come up with a few things that I've learned from that person, but that's just touching the surface. What I recommend is journaling. And there's a couple of ways that you could do it. Is one, you set the stage. You create an atmosphere where it's conducive to writing. Excuse me. Have a nice light so you can see what you're doing. Maybe some nice relaxing music as well. And you simply start writing some of the memories that you have about this person. And keep writing and keep writing and keep writing. Then at some point, you might want to stop writing and think, you know, if I was looking from up high, the dynamic or what was happening in this relationship, what would I be seeing if I was somebody else looking from higher up? What would I be seeing is actually happening in this relationship? What is the other person wanting? What are you wanting? And what lessons might have been learned from those experiences? So that would be one way. Now the other way is simply by having a list, and this is more of a logical way, a list of things that you could think of initially that you would have learned from this person. For example, my love of dancing, my sense of humor, my desire to live a healthy lifestyle, and so on. And you would slowly start uncovering things, whether or not they're accurate, it doesn't matter. You would simply start listing the things that you think from the conscious and gradually going into the unconscious of what you think you captured from the essence of that relationship. And you want to add to that list. So, for example, I'm walking here today and I'm thinking of all these other things that I've remember from the relationship with my mother, for example. And I would write that in that list journal. All right, so this is Linda Robert. Have a good day now. Bye-bye.